Hey everybody, Lane Nordland here with the Western Ag Network. We're going to take a look at what our livestock markets accomplished the week of March 4th through the 8th. Out across our local livestock markets, the futures board, of course, what the cash cattle market looked like. But before we get to what those prices shaped up to be, on Friday, we saw the latest World Ag Supply and Demand Estimates report released, and it offered pretty positive news for both cattle and beef markets. Breaking it down a little bit, we see that the production forecast for 2024 was revised upward by 140 million pounds, anticipating a more robust slaughter rate in the remaining 3 quarters of the year, despite a sluggish start in the first quarter. Now, this optimistic outlook is expected to bolster steer prices, which have shown increases across all 4 quarters compared to the previous month's projections. And we're going to see just how high those feeder cattle prices in our local markets are bringing. Let's just say some of those prices are north of $2,000 a head. Again, we're going to have that in the second half of our report here today. Now, in that WASDE report, we saw in detail the first quarter of 2024 is now expected to average on the beef end of things $179, marking a $3 increase from the previous forecast. Similarly, the second quarter's forecast averaged $183, up $3, while the third quarter's anticipated to offer about a $2 rise at $182. Steer prices in the fourth quarter expected to be about $186, $2 more than initially predicted in the February WASDE report. Additionally, on the beef import end of things for 2024, that was actually revised upward by 50 million pounds compared to the February report, while beef export forecasts remain unchanged from the previous month. As for the cattle futures last week, the activity rounded out the week in the red. We saw those front month fat cattle futures down 90 cents to $1.25 lower across the front month futures trade. June live cattle closed $1.17 lower at $183.42, while August live cattle closed $1.25 lower at $182.25. On the feeder end of things, there was a higher close in the corn market Friday, and prices were about $1.07 to $2.20 weaker across the nearbys, leaving the May contracts $3.90 lower for the week. Feeders closed $2.20 softer in the April issue at $254.10, while May feeders down $1.70 at $256.75. Finally, before we look at those local livestock markets, we finally saw some cash cattle trade develop in the south at $185, which was $2 higher than last week's weighted average. Northern sales were marked mostly at $294 on the dressed end, which is $4 higher than the previous week's weighted average. As for this week, analysts are expecting a steady tone, but they do point out that chain speeds in our slaughter facilities are remaining constrained, and there might be downward pressure on the cash trade in the coming week and maybe weeks, depending on how those processing speeds are impacted. But friends, as I mentioned, we're seeing some pretty impressive feeder steer prices in our local livestock markets. We'll take a look at some of those markets in Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana right after this.
Ready for a real PRF partner?
He was willing to track us for a year and provide that data back to us for a year. That's a guy making a pretty big investment.
At Ag Risk Advisors, this isn't our first rodeo. We are one of the most experienced in pasture rangeland forage. Honesty, commitment, trust. Many companies use these words. At Ag Risk Advisors, we earn them.
Well, as we return back today, it may be daylight savings, but cattle buyers aren't saving their money in the local livestock markets, which for us cow-calf producers, that's very well deserved. We deserve these good prices, and a little bit of humor in my voice, of course, but man, it is about time that we can see these prices continue to climb higher despite all the challenges that we have out in the countryside. And really, that best demand continues to be for cattle suitable to be developed into yearlings. We're seeing steers in that 5 to 750 pound range range, and heifers in the 475 to 650 pound range really be in demand for that yearling development end of things. First, let's look to Torrington livestock there in Wyoming. Over 4,000 head of feeders sold this past week, and they were sharply higher. We saw prices in that 1,900 range, over $2,000, in fact, on some of those 7-weight steers going through the ring there in Torrington this week. It's just impressive. Seeing those prices there, 562 to 593 weight steers priced at 332 to 348, 6 to 649 weights, 303 to 319. That averages out at $1,943 a head. The 660 to just under 700 pound steers, 285 to 308, averaging about $2,000 across those weight classes and prices. And the 7 to 750 pound steers, 278 to 294, coming in at $2,065.90 on average for that weight class. That just continues to impress me. Heifers there in Torrington, 661 to 697, priced at 2 3/4 to 3 3/4, 7 to 741 weights, 242 to 244. North of Torrington there, Billings, Montana, Billings Livestock Commission, over 3,000 head of feeders sold. Feeder steers under 500 pounds sold steady to firm, with the 5 to 750 pound steers mostly $10 higher this past week. Prices for the 5 to 540 weight steers, 338 to 369. The 5.5 to 6 weights, 323 to 340. With the just over 6 weight to 643 weights, 306 to $3.29. Heifers there in Montana weighing 600 to 645, 285 to 294. With the 7 to 740 weight heifers, 241 to 259. Finally, let's look to the Hunta Livestock Commission in Colorado. Over just under 2,200 head of feeders selling under 550 pounds, unevenly steady, with anything over 550 pounds, $4 to $18 higher. The 555 to 595 weight steers in La Junta, 290 to 321, 677 to 694 weight steers, 260 to 275. Feeder heifers under 500 pounds, mostly $6 to $7 higher, with heifers over 500 pounds selling unevenly steady there in La Junta. And let's wrap up at Sterling Livestock Commission in Sterling, Colorado. Over 1,700 head of feeders selling, with the 6 to 644 weight steers, 294 to 307, with the 7 to 748 weights, 260 to 271, and 782 to just under 800 pounds there at 799, price of 251 to 261. So I tell you what, friends, it's going to be interesting to see what these calf contracts look like as buyers start putting feelers out there for the video sales here in the next coming weeks and months. When we're seeing 7 weight steers bring over $2,000 in March here of 2024, it makes cow-calf producers pretty excited. And again, I know we all wish we had our herds of yesteryear, but we're going to take these prices, that's for sure. And going to be interesting to see, of course, what the replacement females will bring as we go through the year and look towards 2025. But these are things that we will continue to talk about, not only here on our Western Ag Network digital channels like our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, of course, but every single day on our radio and TV programs on the Western Ag Network. So we of course, bring ag news multiple times a day on over 90 radio stations in 9 Western states. Make sure and tune into that radio dial every single day on the Western Ag Network. More details, of course, can be found at westernagnetwork.com. Thanks for joining us for this special livestock market update on the Western Ag Network. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.